Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. So there was no video yesterday because there was not much going on. So I did spend the time a little bit getting some data for the miners as far as what they were in Q2 of last year and Q2 of this year as far as shares outstanding to take a look at how much dilution we've had in the year since. We'll take a look at obviously how much dilution we've had per petahash for each one of those, how much they have grown, things like that for the basically for the year over year numbers. Okay, we also have a story that potentially Bitcoin is down because of, well, the ETF keeps getting kicked down the road. And that could be true, but we'll take a look at it here. I'm not going to get into it too deeply into that, and we'll pretty much call it a day, so it should be pretty easy here. We're still waiting on a lot of the miners to provide us with the quarterly results. When those do come in, we'll get you guys updated at that point. But as always, as you guys know here, the drill is not financial advice, for entertainment only. Please, please, please do your own research and invest in the following coins and companies for full disclosure. And let's take a look at the first story that we have here, and then we'll get into the dilution of the miners here. So if we look at that one right now, here's a story: dwindling optimism for Bitcoin ETF approval to blame as weekly crypto outflows hit 55 million. Yes, this could be part of it. Obviously, didn't help out, but I mean, we kind of knew that the ETF wasn't going to be happening anytime soon. We're still thinking it's probably at least another 4 to 6 months out, maybe at the best, if that happens. Excuse me. But it's going to take a while for it to come in. Even if it does come in, we'll have to see. We know that Gary Gensler is highly against it. So is the SEC. So, but there's lawsuits and things like that happening, and we're still waiting on approval from, what is it, Grayscale against the SEC, or the verdict on that one, see which way the courts ruled in that that case. When that comes in, that might change things around for us. But we kind of knew also that Bitcoin was kind of overheated a little bit, needed a little bit of a pullback. I think this is just part of the game here, okay? So let's take a look at the miners here as far as what happened from Q2 of last year to Q2 of this year with shares and things like that. So I pulled the data in from obviously all of the miners that we track. Some of the miners are not in here because either A, I don't have data for them, or they're just really small and there wasn't much dilution happening in them, and there wasn't much growth. So we're not covering those. So we're basically looking at miners that are going to be getting to 5 exahash or higher, okay? So we got Riot, Marathon, CleanSpark, Core Scientific, Hut 8, Hive, Bitfarms, and TeraWolf in there. Cypher, I don't have data going back to Q2 because they became public, I believe, this year. So there's no data for them. Some of the other miners also, Iris still hasn't provided their Q2 numbers yet either. So if you guys are wondering on that one, Stronghold, I don't have all the data for them either as far as what their hash rate was back in last year because they stopped providing it. So those are some of the reasons why you might not see some of these miners in here, okay? All right. So here's what we got. We got Q2 2022 shares, and then we got Q2 2023 shares. We look at how much it was how much diluted percentage-wise, and we'll just kind of go through the list here. So Riot diluted 27 million shares, about 17.93%. Marathon diluted 60 million, 53%. CleanSpark diluted 84 million. This was at, for everybody here, this should be for the end of Q2, not when they actually reported the numbers. When they report the numbers, some of the miners actually provide the most up-to-date numbers. We're not using those. We're using the ones for end of Q2 2023, okay? So CleanSpark diluted a heck of a lot, 179%. Core diluted 29 million, only 8.2. They obviously have a lot of shares out, so even 29 million doesn't account for much as far as percentage-wise. Hut 8 diluted 29 million shares, 15.38%. Hive diluted 2.4, which is kind of nice to see that they diluted a little bit there. 3.02%, so it looks like they're the ones that diluted the least here out of the bunch. Bitfarms diluted 51.9 million, 25%. TeraWolf diluted 111 million, 105% on that, okay? So that's the way the numbers stacked up there. Then we look at Q2 2022 hash rate, which was what was their hash rate at the end of June of last year. Riot had 4.04 exahash. They were at 10.7 exahash at the end of Q2 this year. Marathon was at 3.9. And now they are at 17.7. CleanSpark was at 2.8. They are at 6.7. Core was at 10.3 exahash. This year they were at 15 exahash. Hut 8 was at 2.78 exahash. They were actually down to 2.5. And the reason for that is, along with Hive, they were mining also Ethereum. So they had the GPU miners, which were adding to their hash rate as well. But those were gone, taken out in September of last year. So their hash rate actually dropped because of it. So Hive was at 3.49, almost 3.5. They went down to 3.3 here at the end of this year in Q2. Not the end of the year, but Q2 of this year. Bitfarms was at 3.6. They went up to 5.3. TeraWolf obviously was just starting out. They were at 192 petahash. and within a year they got up to 4.9 exahash, so really good there. And then you can see obviously the difference here. The only two that were down was Hut8 was down 185 petahash, and Hive was down 174 petahash because of the Ethereum mining was no longer part of it. Okay, and then as far as we look at dilution per petahash for that, so if we just look at the growth that they had from quarter to quarter and how much dilution was based on that. So we can see here Riot diluted approximately 4,402 shares per petahash, Marathon 4,372. So they would be probably the ones that diluted the least here to quarter over or year over year as far as installed hash rate. CleanSpark 21,714 shares. Core was 6,187 shares per petahash. Hut8 was actually a negative 159,000. They diluted quite a bit, but they actually lost hash rate. That's the reason for that. Hive was negative 14,237 shares. Well, that's because, like I said, they're negative here. Bitfarms was 30,000 and TeraWolf was 23,595. And the reason I think at least Bitfarms, TeraWolf, and CleanSpark was their price was way down low for a majority of the time there until this year kind of helped things out. And that contributed to having to dilute more to get the capital they needed to grow, unfortunately. Okay. Then when we look at the future hash rate of where they're going to be at everything that's been announced as far as being bought, Riot's going to be about 20 exahash, Marathon 24, CleanSpark 17.5. They're going to be probably a little bit less than that. They're trying to get to 16. They're going to get rid of some of the older miners that are a little bit less efficient. So that should bring them down to 16, but I have 17 right now until I hear otherwise. Core is going to be at 15.2. Not much growth left. They're supposed to buy some more miners, but I didn't add those in there because we don't know if that deal is going to go through yet with Bitmain. So they're at 15.2, kind of where they are right now. Hut8. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt with the merger with USBTC. I'm at 7.5. We'll look at the numbers here if I take that out, and what would they be by themselves also. Hive is going to be at 3.7. They're saying that they're supposed to get to 6. That's why I left them in here, because they're saying they're going to get to 6. I said, you know, my minimum is 5 exahash. They're working towards 6 by the end of this year. We'll see if they can get there. Bitfarms 7.8. They're also saying that they're going to get to like 9 exahash, I think is their target. TeraWolf is at 7.9, so they still have a little bit of growth left. And then on this part of it here, we're looking different for future. So we're looking at here is where were they last year at the end of Q2? Where are they going to be with future hash rate? What is that difference between those two? So Riot's going to have about growth of 15.7 exahash from that point. Also, Riot might dilute more going forward to buy the machines that they need to get to the 20 exahash. They might use some of the cash that they have. We just don't know. So that's something to be mindful of. Also, Marathon's going to be at, is installing an additional 20 exahash from where they were last year to get to the 24 exahash. CleanSpark is installing 14.7. Core 4.9 from that point. Hut8 4.7. Hive only 284 petahash currently, but they're saying to 6 exahash. Like I said, Bitfarms 4.25 exahash, and TeraWolf 7.7 from all of last year. Okay, so when we look at the future differences in hash rate, how much they're going to be growing, if we look at the dilution, a lot of these miners have already paid for the growth here. Riot's the only one that's questionable here that I know of. Hive is also probably going to be diluting using the ATM as well. We got a news report from them last week that they're going to be, I think, using an ATM for like 90 million possibly to fund growth and things like that. Hive don't know if they're going to be diluting. I'm guessing that they are, depending on how much they hodl, how much they generate, and their growth with, or the merger with USBTC. We'll see all those numbers come up as well. Core, of course, going to be diluting for sure, because I think part of that deal is they're going to pay part of it in cash and the rest is going to be in shares, I believe. CleanSpark has diluted a little bit more here since the Q2 results. They're at 152 million right now. So that was kind of going to change things up a little bit here. So we'll get a better picture of Q3 versus Q3 of last year on all of these guys here as well. TeraWolf, TeraWolf is in kind of a hard spot with debt right now. So we'll have to see how they manage that, whether they're going to dilute that to pay off some of the debt. We'll have to see. I'm thinking they're probably hoping that Bitcoin price goes up in value, so does their stock and things like that, where they don't have to do that. They can obviously sell what they mine and pay off debt that way. Okay, so here's the way things worked out. Dilution per petahash future, basically. Riot came in the lowest here at 1,761 shares per petahash growth to the future amount. Marathon, 2,952 shares. CleanSpark, 5,738 shares per petahash. Core, 5,935 per petahash. Hut 8, 6,260. Hive, 8,741. Bitfarms, 12,217. And TeraWolf, 14,319. And like I said, Bitfarms, TeraWolf as well. Stock was down quite a bit, so the dilution was harder than it would have been if stock was better priced, but that's what you get. Okay, when we look at the chart over here, we can see here, Riot, obviously the number one, they're adding another 15.7 exahash. Marathon was adding 20 exahash from last year. CleanSpark is adding 14.7 exahash from last year. You can see that the way that came in. And then you can see Core is actually, the numbers here are under, they're going to be 4.9 exahash, but they're basically 5.9 thousand shares per petahash. And you can see the rest of them as well. Here's the interesting part on Hut 8. Like I said, if I take out their current future hash rate with the USBTC merger and just bring it back down to where they are going to be by themselves, it's a bad number for them. So just wanted to warn you guys here. Let's take a look at it. Where's my drop dilution? Here we go. So at that point, Hut 8 basically diluted 58,000 shares per petahash to get an additional 508 petahash from last year, right? There was basically no growth for them this past year. When you look from Q2 to Q2 of this year, and that's obviously not good. They also hodled a lot last year where they were diluting to keep hodl going. They had other issues as well. We've talked about this in the past. I'm not going to go into it again here. So that's why I'm thinking the USBTC merger is definitely going to help them out tremendously here. But you can see the numbers, how things stacked up. And then we come down here. We have the hash rate growth, right? Growth per dilution per petahash future ratio. So on this one, this kind of shows us what we're actually getting for the dilution. You're getting 8.9 times growth from Riot, 6.9 growth from Marathon, 2.5 growth from CleanSpark, just barely 0.827 growth from Core, so really no growth there. Hut 8 also with only their mining here, but if we change them back to being with USBTC merger at about 7.5 exahash, that definitely helps them out here as well. And let's go back here. They're at 0.754. Hive is at 0.32 now. Bitfarms at, this should have been, TeraWolf would be at 0.542, Bitfarms 0.348, and then Hive at 0.032. All right. So it also depends on how much they're growing, the way I look at this. And obviously the top three are Riot, Marathon, and CleanSpark as far as growth per dilution that we can see here, followed by Core, Hut 8, and then Hive, Bitfarms, and TeraWolf. And like I said, TeraWolf and Bitfarms, stock price was down, so that's why they had to dilute more than they probably wanted to in order to get the growth that they got, okay? Other things here to note is HODL. So companies have HODL. Obviously, Marathon also HODLed quite a bit last year as well. They didn't sell anything until the beginning of this year. And I believe, actually, I think, let me see here, Marathon, I believe, started selling a little bit towards the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken here. Let me see here. So, well, yeah, they actually started selling in January of this year, so I was right. So they started selling quite a bit here and have been selling this past year. Last year, they were pretty much hodling everything. So dilution happened because of that as well. Then that's not being accounted here in the numbers that I have here as well. Hut 8 also, let me see here, they started selling this year as well. If we look at Hut 8 started selling in February, it looks like. So they've sold a couple of months here, 5 months out of the year so far. They didn't sell anything last year. They were basically holding everything that they can, and they had to dilute because of it. So that's also not being attributed there as well. But when you look at Hut 8 without USBTC, you can definitely see how much that has an impact on how much they diluted per share, basically per petahash growth. Okay. Now, like I said, this isn't accounting also for HODL in there. Okay. So that's the way things have stacked up. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this one. And we'll get into Bitcoin and how the miners have performed today, which wasn't a really good day for the miners or Bitcoin. Bitcoin's kind of trading sideways right now, but let's take a look at that nonetheless. So here's my thoughts on Bitcoin. Bitcoin, obviously, as we peaked here a little bit in price or in RSI back in, this was June 23rd. This was a Friday. We kind of peaked right there on the RSI. It was above 70, a little bit of a bot signal. But the good thing was price was actually going up while the RSI was going down. A lot of people were thinking that things might work out that way. And then obviously we had the Fed FOMC meeting with the interest rate hike here, which was on Wednesday, 26th of July. That, as we've seen in the past events where we have an interest rate hike, usually Bitcoin takes a little bit of a dive. And sure enough, it took a while for it, but it did happen. Now, two things happened there. Story from Tesla, or not Tesla, SpaceX, Elon Musk, supposedly they sold 300 some million in Bitcoins that they held on the balance sheet. Don't know exactly when they sold it, but supposedly that's when the market kind of tanked a little bit here, which was back here on the Thursday of last week. And then we also had obviously the hopes that the SEC lawsuit or grayscale lawsuit against the SEC, we would have a result on that by the end of last week. That never happened. We might still get it by the end of this month, which I think might propel depending on which way the decision goes. Otherwise than that, this was a good pullback, I think, a healthy pullback. RSI came back down below 30, came way down here. We haven't been this low for quite a while, which is good. And then Bitcoin has been kind of trading here sideways a little bit for the last couple of days. It's been kind of hugging this, what I thought was going to be support line at 26,300. Looks like more or less the support is right around 26,000 right now. Okay, so on the daily, we've been doing okay. We're going sideways. On the 4-hour chart, well, let's take a look at Bitcoin was actually down today 0.13% to close at 26,090. On the 4-hour chart, you can see here that even though price of Bitcoin has been kind of flat or if not down a little bit, RSI has been going up a little bit. So that's a little bit concerning there, meaning we could possibly go down a little bit more unless we get a reversal here happening. Also, we're seeing that the 20-day moving average is getting close to the 200 weekly moving average and the 200 daily moving average. That might cross, that might have some significant importance to the algorithms and things like that. We might get a little drop there as well from that. Okay. And then if we look at the 1-hour chart, RSI, you can see here that RSI was actually lower while price was higher. RSI is now higher while price is lower here, but we have been kind of trading sideways. Looking at the peaks here that we do have, we can see that Bitcoin price was right around 26,229. We were there on this peak as well. And then we were a little bit lower below this peak, but the peak is just a little bit lower than that as well. So on the 1-hour chart, it's not looking that bad. We are trading sideways. We're looking for a little bit of a reversal to happen. On the 4-hour chart, it looks a little bit more, more concerning, I guess you could say, the way it's going. I mean, we're still low on the RSI, so we still have obviously more room to go up, but something to keep an eye on and be mindful of, okay? Now, as far as the miners are concerned, miners, Argo was there were a couple of miners that were up. Argo was up 8.49%, BitDeer was up 3.54%, Greenage was up 1.32%, Stronghold was up 3.19%, and Wolf was up 1.02%. Everybody else was down quite a bit here. Well, single digits at least, except for Mossum. Mossum was down 10.81%. And WGMI ETF was also down as well, if those of you guys that are invested in that one. And then Ethereum, kind of acting the same way as Bitcoin right now. Not much happening there. It's going sideways. It was down actually 1.08% today, closed at 1,667. RSI still way on the oversold territory on the daily. On the 4 hours, like same pattern that we're seeing in Bitcoin. Price is going down lower while the RSI is going up. And then the 1 hour, we can see here that the peaks, if we look at the peaks on it, they're about the same here as they were. But RSI is actually coming down while prices also have been coming down a little bit here. So we'll have to keep an eye on and see what happens there. And then finally, let's take a look at the network hash rate for Bitcoin, see what's going on there. On the 7-day average, if we look at that, we actually peaked here a couple of days ago at 414 million terahashes. And then we're actually down a little bit and up. We're up 410 million terahashes right now. Looking at the 1-day average, we can see that we're kind of in this pattern a little bit here, going sideways, more or less. We peaked here. Let's see, this was 440. Then we were up. Our other peak was 448 million terahashes. And we've kind of peaked at that point, it seems like. Plus, with the price of Bitcoin coming down, network hash rate still kind of high relatively and increasing slowly. Some of the miners that have the older miners are possibly plugging those right now as it is. And they'll probably continue doing that unless Bitcoin starts going up in value much, much higher. Okay, so that is it. We'll see what else we can come up with later on this week. If there's not going to be any news stories or anything interesting, don't expect a video from me because I'm just not going to waste your guys' time if there's nothing interesting going on. But I just wanted to point that out and show you guys what's going on with the dilution. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, helps me out tremendously. The spreadsheet's going to be available to my Patreon members as well. Thank you to everyone there, and we'll see what happens later on this week. Like I said, I'm still waiting on a couple miners to provide their quarterly results. When they do that, we'll actually do a video on the quarter-over-quarter results for the miners and metrics and things like that, which is going to be interesting to see how each has performed that way. Okay, so that's it. Hope you guys have a wonderful evening. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.